Now, I've learned some things along the way, not only about hiker gear for hiker girls, but also for duo backpacking. That is, gear that is specifically made for two people to go backpacking, but who want to stick pretty close together. So when it comes to duo backpacking, one of the first things that I wanted to do was have a look at the tent and sleep system. Now, the sleep pad that I got for my daughter and I was 50 inches wide. It was the width of two wide pads next to each other. Both of us are stomach sleepers, both of us like to kick a leg out. We needed the room. I had a couple of different options here. One was to use my Foxelli self-inflating sleep pads. Now, each one of these measures 72 by 25, and they have an R value of 6.5, so that's going to be pretty solid for backpacking. I've used these before and they are fairly comfortable. What makes a sleep pad self-inflating is that the interior is partially foam, and it helps inflate the pad when it's unrolled. Once it's been sitting for a few minutes, a couple quick breaths, and the pad is completely filled up. This, however, means that the pad is both fairly heavy. This one comes in at 39 ounces each, and they take up quite a bit of space in the pack. The good news is that because they snap together to form a single pad, each person can carry their own weight and volume. Because they snap together, there is a gap that runs up the middle that is not inflated or insulated. And so what you end up with is a cold depression between the two people sleeping on the pads, and although they don't move apart, you really are still sleeping on two separate sleeping pads. I opted instead for the Big Agnes Insulated Ultra Air Core. This is a 78 by 50 inch pad with a 4.5 R rating. It comes in at 55 ounces, which makes it 23 ounces lighter than the Foxelli pads together. It's a 3¼ inch pad with larger 3½ inch outer chambers that kind of keeps you centered in the middle of the pad. The inside has an antimicrobial treatment to prevent microorganism growth, but this isn't as much of an issue because it also comes with its own inflation bag. With a pad this big, it ended up taking quite a while to inflate. However, that was the only issue that I had with the sleep pad. The Big Agnes is warm, it is comfortable, and it worked very well pairing with the Nemo discos. Because the sleeping bags each came in at about 49 ounces, we had a total of about 150 ounces for two complete sleep systems. Now, the number of people that a tent can allegedly hold is actually based on the sleep system. If you could get two 20-inch wide sleeping pads in a tent, it was considered a two-person tent. A two-person tent is usually not very comfortable for two people, unless you are a family, couple, or very good friends. So I went out and bought my very first three-person tent. It was the REI Half Dome. This thing was 90 by 78, 44 inches tall. It's got a simple single pole set, a 40 denier canopy with a 20 denier nylon mesh, a 40 denier ripstop nylon floor, a 30 denier nylon rainfly, and a footprint included. It's set up easily, it was comfortable. Now, I absolutely loved everything about this tent except for one thing, which you can probably guess, and that was the weight. Now, coming in at 77 ounces is pretty darn impressive for a three-person tent. Had absolutely no complaints at all. However, it's just big, and for backpacking, even when you're trying to carry stuff for two people, there was just too much to this tent. I was carrying a gigantic backpack, and even then I still couldn't get the tent inside with a bare canister and a big sleeping bag. So I started to look around for something that would come in at a more ultralight weight standard, but still be big enough to handle a 50 by 78 pad, and I found it in the MSR Freelite two-person tent. This is a semi-freestanding tent, which means that although it is basically self-supporting in its structure, if you want to take full advantage of the volume, you do need to stake out the foot end of the tent. Now, this tent is 84 by 50, and one of the things that made it special is that it does not have a tapered floor. That means it's 50 inches across at the top and bottom. It's 84 inches long, which would easily accept the pad, and it's 39 inches tall. The other thing that attracted me to this tent is that it comes in at a trail weight of only 2 pounds. So even though we were going to lose quite a bit of room from the half dome, we were also shaving off 35 ounces. Now, the size of the MSR Freelite is not the only thing that makes it ultralight. It is also made with much thinner materials. Pretty much the whole thing is made with 15 denier ripstop nylon, and the floor was a little sketchy. Unlike the Half Dome, the MSR Freelite does not come with its own footprint, and the very first time I used it, I got 2 little holes in the floor. Now this was the same place that I used my Durston X-Mid, which also has a 15 denier nylon floor, and even though I was set up in almost exactly the same spot, the Durston tent had 0 issues. Now that could definitely be from the added friction that 2 people and an extra wide and extra heavy sleep pad make. So I'm not making any judgments of the quality of the Freelite. I'm just saying that for duo gear, this is a little bit lightweight, really could have used a footprint. I did have one legitimate complaint, and that is a condensation problem. Now once again, I was using this tent in the same place as my X-Mid, which is a complete Dyneema tent. These kinds of tents are almost famous for having condensation issues, and yet I didn't really have one in this spot just a couple of weeks before my daughter and I took the MSR Freelite to the same place. Incredibly, even though we did not even use the rainfly, the condensation inside the bug net was so bad that I had to wake up 5 or 6 times during the night and wipe it down because our sleeping bags were getting wet. Now again, in the X-Mid it was just me, but even with 2 people, I found it incredible that a bug net only tent could have so much condensation that I was beginning to fear that we were going to have to pack up and leave. So, court is still out on the MSR Freelite as far as that goes, but otherwise, I found it to be a good option. So I had this fantastic big Agnes 50-inch wide sleep pad. It was going to fit in the MSR Freelite Ultralight tent. What were we going to actually sleep in? Well, I discovered that the Nemo Disco that I got back when I did the video on stomach and side sleepers actually had a men's and a women's variety. And the main difference is which side the zipper is on. Now that may seem like a weird way to label the sleeping bag. I mean, is it the case that women like to get out the right side of the bag and men like to get out the left? No. The main reason they did that is because the 2 bags can zip together. So what's great about this is that you've got the Nemo Disco that is shaped well for stomach and side sleepers. Men and women can equally fit well inside of it, and it can be zipped together so you can share warmth and get cuddly in the night in the backcountry. The bags are rated down to 15 degrees, and with the new ISO standards, they have been rated at 17 degrees for comfort and 5 degrees for low end. Some of what makes these bags cool is their spoon shape that is, again, good for side and stomach sleepers. They have these things called thermo gills, which are basically uninsulated vents that you can open up on top to regulate your temperature. The bags keep you warm with water-resistant 650 fill down, and they are super comfortable with a 30 denier nylon taffeta that is also durably water-resistant, and the bags are finished off with a waterproof, breathable foot box, so that if your bag ends up pushed up against the tent in the night, any condensation you happen to come in contact with in the tent is not going to compromise the insulation of the bag. The bag also comes with an integrated pillow pocket, which makes it nice to have a pillow or a jacket or something stuffed in there for your head that isn't going to flop around and get off center. Each bag comes with a 2-way number 5 YKK zipper, and because the zippers are on opposite sides and have a special zip-off mechanism, they can be zipped together. Now this does not seal them completely. There is a little bit of a space down at the bottom of the 2 zippers, easily plugged with a sock or something, but essentially what it does is gives you the ability to have one big giant sleeping bag that easily accommodates 2 people. Overall, the system worked perfectly. We each kind of had our own space, but we were also able to share body warmth, and it just made for a very comfortable sleeping experience. About the only major challenge that I discovered with doing the duo zip-together sleeping bag thing is that because the zipper is in the middle, if either one of you has to get up in the night to take care of some business, you're actually unzipping the other person's bag too, and because you're getting out in the middle, there's almost no way to avoid waking them up and getting a cold draft in. Now, it's not a huge deal. If you unzip and just kind of hold their side of the bag down, you can flip it over and get out of the tent, but it is something to consider in case warmth is a primary factor for sleeping in that arrangement. The zippers worked pretty well. They could be a little finicky, so I would make sure that if you're using this system, you are being very careful with the zippers, taking your time and being patient with them. because if you get into a snag type situation or the zippers can't come undone, you could run into a serious problem packing the system out or even using it again. Luckily, Nemo has a lifetime warranty on the bags, and I would hope something like that would be covered, although it could be chalked up to misuse. Another consideration that you might need to make if you are duo backpacking, especially if it's because you're with someone that either can't carry a lot of gear or doesn't have a lot of their own, is that you may want to get a backpack that is more substantial and larger than your regular solo backpack. Personally, because I am trying to get set up for backpacking with my kids, I knew that I was going to be carrying quite a bit more, and because every time you get something bigger to accommodate more people, that means the volume goes up and that means the backpack has to get bigger. I just went straight to the top and got the Gregory Baltoro 100-liter Pro backpack. This thing is a beast, but believe it or not, it is incredibly comfortable. And although it does increase the weight by 3 or 4 pounds compared to my normal packs, by the time I get all the other gear in there, it really is barely noticeable. And especially because most of the weight goes into its unbelievably cool suspension system. Now, because I was backpacking with someone that wasn't going to be able to handle a lot of weight, I didn't want to just split everything up the way I would if another stronger hiker were going with me. Because I was going to be carrying the entire shelter system and the bulk of the sleep system, I needed a heavy hauler, and I needed something with a lot of room because duo backpacking gear does not compress down very small. I ended up finding a great deal online for the Gregory Baltoro Pro 100. This is pretty much the Cadillac of popular large-size backpacks. It is a 100-liter backpack that weighs in at a whopping 91 ounces. Now, I know weight-wise that is just beyond comprehension for a lot of you. However, you need to keep in mind that this is meant to be carrying many times its weight, and a lot of the ounces that you are putting on are getting you a very good suspension system to help mitigate that weight on the trail. This thing has an adjustable torso, dual alloy frame stays, and Gregory's free float dynamic carry system with auto-rotating shoulder straps, an amazing hip belt, and a fantastic lumbar pad. There are 3 different ways into the pack. You can go the standard drawstring from the top. There's also a U-zip in the front that allows you to open it up like a piece of luggage, and bottom access through a sleeping bag compartment with a removable divider. It's got 9 pockets total on the outside, all of the standard ones, plus a dual front zippered pocket with a floating divider wall. The hip belt pockets are huge, and the front mesh stretch pocket comes with a clip to make sure things don't fall out the top. It's hydration compatible with a speed clip hydration hanger that is actually compatible with a smaller backpack that you can buy separately. I can use it as a hydration reservoir hanger and then take it out and use it for day hikes. But you can also get Gregory's 3D Hydro Trek reservoir, and that'll work as well. It's got a sunglass quick stow system on the shoulder straps. The back panel is a mesh with over 90% open air, so it's very breathable. The brain or floating top pocket has a large zippered compartment along with a small quick access pocket and an underside zippered pocket. It's practically a day pack in and of itself. And the Baltoro Pro 100 comes with one of the coolest water bottle holsters I've seen. It's called a Sidewinder, and it's basically a stowaway sleeve that pops out the side and zips back up when it's not being used. So although the Baltoro Pro 100 is quite heavy, you're trading ounces for comfort and carryability, which is important when you've got a lot of big, high volume, high weight gear that isn't very easy to split up, or that you simply can't split up given the strength of the person you're hiking with. So those are my big 3 when it comes to duo backpacking. Alright, I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has, why don't you give the video a like, subscribe to Backcountry Pilgrim if you're into hiking, backpacking, and the gear that goes with it, whether it is made for men or women. Until next time, I'm Doug. Thanks for watching.